How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
Excellent, excellent. Thanks for really taking your time, and you're really busy. We took you away from your prospecting here this
Sure.
morning, and we really appreciate it.
No problem.
You know, what I wanted to try to accomplish today is to maybe share some things about how you've done such an amazing job, really over your career, but maybe more focused in the last 3 or 4 years on really taking your business to the real new level. I mean, you really moved up with this. So I kind of want to talk about that a little bit, et cetera. But what's your marketplace right now? What area do you actually
Long
service?
Beach and about 10, 15 miles around
Okay.
Long Beach, basically.
Okay.
There's tons of little cities, obviously, so.
Right, and you don't tend to go too far out, you don't stray too far from that marketplace?
No, I mean, I would say 85% of my business is in Long Beach, Lakewood, and Signal Hill.
Okay,
And then there's some outliers here and there, but for the most part, it's here.
very good, good. And you started in real estate when?
2003.
Wow, 2003. Okay, so you were in part of that market going from 3, 4, 5, 6.
Right, that was a crazy
Okay.
market.
Crazy market,
Uh-huh.
okay.
Mhm.
And you were a buyer's agent or a selling agent at that, a listing agent at that
When I
time?
first started, I really didn't know anyone in town. I'd come from out of state, so I really didn't, all my friends even were up in LA.
Really?
So really
Okay.
I knew very few people here.
Okay,
So when I first started, my prospecting was just listed, just sold calls
okay,
and hot buyer calls. So I would go around to the other agents in the office and ask them for their referrals and if I could work their buyers that they didn't want to work.
Uh-huh.
So I would say back then 90% of my business was buyers.
was
when I
buyers.
first started.
Okay,
Mhm.
got it. And you were running around still basically the same marketplace?
Boy, back then I would go anywhere.
Anywhere, okay.
Maybe
All
not.
right.
Maybe not anywhere. I think the furthest away I ever sold was in Anza, which is out in the desert.
Oh my gosh.
It was a mobile home, but hey,
Okay,
it's crazy.
all right.
I actually never went there, but I partnered with an agent who was out there. So I did learn early on to outsource and not be so much in need that I needed to go to all these really faraway places.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Take us through the progression. Okay, so you were this buyer's agent, you'd go almost anywhere, working with a lot of buyers. That you did that for 3, 4 years, and then you felt like you needed to change, or what happened?
Yeah, I mean, so I went from 2003, which was just buyers. My first year I did 12 transactions, and my very first transaction was in North Hills. It was his brother. Sold him a house, very
Okay.
typical, right?
Uh-huh,
And then from there, I started listening to Mike Ferry.
okay.
I was really lucky that I was introduced to him very early on, and I started doing my prospecting, but I found that I could hustle, I could get out there. I was getting my offers accepted over other people, and there would be 20, 30 offers
Wow.
back then.
Wow.
But I started realizing that I was going out and hustling for the buyers, and even sometimes, no matter how much I hustled, and that was still when we were presenting offers in person,
Sure.
sometimes, then I still wouldn't get it. So I thought, well, I need to start doing something different because this is frustrating.
Okay,
So I started focusing on doing more just listed, just sold, or I'd call hot buyer calls. I'd say, hey, I have this buyer who's looking for this property, and I would call just listed, just sold, basically.
okay.
So I started actually taking some listings, which was really exciting.
So you started that by, you have a buyer in a
Mhm.
particular marketplace, you
Mhm.
call around in the marketplace, trying to find a match, so to
Right.
speak. Oh,
Right.
okay, great.
Yeah, and I said, well, hey, I've got these buyers, so I need to find a property for them.
Right.
Inventory was very, very low.
Uh-huh.
We had less than a 1-month supply of homes on the market back then. So it was really just a matter of, I need to go out and find something for these
Mhm,
people
mhm.
because there's nothing else out there. So that's pretty much what I did. And then I started, eventually, a lot of those people would move from a condo to a house or things
Sure.
like that. And then, so I started taking more listings too. But it was still back then,
Mo-
50/50.
At
Maybe
best,
65 buyers
Okay.
and 45%
Okay.
listings.
And that was through 2006, 2007, or later?
Right, and then obviously I started learning to watch the market statistics and watching that information. And in February of 2007, I remember normally in Long Beach we have about 300 sales per month. And I remember February of 2007 we had 111
Oh, wow.
sales.
Wow.
And it was I was scared, I was
Sure,
nervous.
sure.
But actually that year was one of my best years at that time.
Okay.
So I'd really grown a lot, and then the market changed, but I felt like I was really positioned to actually be able to help people in this
And that-
totally opposite shifted market.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that was 2007, 8, 9?
Mhm.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So what were you doing, how were you getting business then?
Before 2006, 2007, I was doing just listed as sold calls and past clients or
Okay.
center of influence. Now, back then again, I still didn't know a lot of people, so I called Mike Ferry agents that I knew across the country. I called friends that I knew across the country. I
Sure.
did a ton of referral business.
Okay.
I would probably do 10 to 12 to 20. I'd get referral checks, and it was
Wow,
great.
wow.
Because that's who I knew. So it didn't matter if they were in Illinois, New York, Texas, wherever, I would call them and they would help my friends who were all over the country.
Okay, so you actually were calling a friend that you had in another state.
Mhm.
Oh, this is interesting, okay.
Mhm.
So you had a friend in another state, or maybe perhaps a seller that moved to another state,
Right?
and that you would talk to them, if they needed to buy or sell, you connected them with a local agent, probably a Mike Ferry friend or something like that.
Right.
And that would get you a referral check.
Right.
Okay, so
Or
smart.
they would refer me to their friends.
So,
so I
yeah,
would do
right,
the same thing.
right,
So,
okay, good.
so I thought, well, hey, I know them. They like me. They're going to help me out anyway.
Absolutely.
So might as well call them.
Yeah, good.
So yeah, I was calling them, and I was calling, like I said, mostly just as just solds.
Uh-huh.
And then the little bit of past clients that I did have.
Okay,
Then 2007 happened. I did nothing but call expireds all day long.
okay.
And shame on me for that, because I neglected a lot of my past clients and my center of influence.
Okay,
And unfortunately, there were a lot of them that actually needed my help during that time. So I found out later, I think I was embarrassed to call them at that time because the market had changed.
and were you a little embarrassed that maybe you had sold them a house that now was worth less money?
Absolutely.
Had nothing to do with you.
Nothing to do with me.
Right. Interesting.
2005, 2006, I sold them a house here, and then 2007, 2008 was suddenly worth here.
Right,
And I felt bad for them.
sure.
I'm an amiable. So I felt really bad for them, and I felt bad that I had sold something that they had now lost a bunch of money on.
Right.
So I didn't call them when really a lot of them needed my help.
They still needed your help.
They still needed my help.
Absolutely.
So a lot of them either ended up in foreclosure or Schwartz sold their houses without me, and
Got
I
it.
could have helped them.
Sure.
So I've learned that for future downtrending cycles, that
Okay.
they still need my help, and the market is what the market is. It's not my fault or anybody else's fault. It just
It just
is.
is. Yeah. Got it.
So I won't do that
Interesting.
again. I won't make that expensive mistake again.
Wow. So your business grew. You started taking more listings. You started talking to past client and sphere. You're a hustler, so you were making a little bit more money. Then you got to a certain level, okay?
I was stuck at 45 transactions for
Okay.
probably 5 or 6 years.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, 45 transactions is
It's
not
not
a
a bad
bad
place to be stuck.
Yeah, if you're gonna
but
be stuck.
I wanted more. And I kept seeing all these people, other people around me, and many of my friends who I've been in Mike Ferry with for, at that point, 8, 9, 10 years,
Mhm.
and doing so much more.
Okay,
I thought, I should be able to do that. Why can't I?
exactly.
And I would get very frustrated that I wasn't doing more. And I think that some of it had to do with my environment,
Okay.
and that I was very much the only agent at my office at the time that was consistently prospecting, that was usually the first one in the morning. I turned the alarm off every morning.
Okay.
So I was always the first
First
one
one
in
in,
the office.
last one out.
Last one out generally.
Yeah,
And I couldn't figure out why I wasn't doing more.
okay.
And I think that I worked in silo essentially, so it was just me, and then I had an assistant,
Okay,
and that was it. And we just kept kept hitting that wall, and I just kept being 46, 47, 45, 40,
Right.
and right around there for 5 or 6 years.
Okay, all right. What happened? What was the change? Or was it you decided, something happened, somebody introduced you to something? What was
Well,
it?
a big part of it, I think, is coming to our office.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So, I mean, switching offices, I was at an office that had 100% splits after
Okay.
a certain level.
Okay.
And everybody told me, oh, you can't switch
Right.
because if you do, it's gonna cost
Cost
you
you
so much
money,
more.
right.
And I had changed back in 2007 as well, and I would have mistaken me for an analytical, because I sat down and made spreadsheets and charts and tried to figure out what was more cost effective for
Sure,
me.
sure.
But I was really just looking at what the costs were, not the benefits.
Ah, interesting.
So I was looking at, okay, how much is it gonna cost me to make copies? How much is it gonna cost me to rent office space at this place? How much is all of these expenses gonna be, which at my previous office had been covered, because it was
'Cause
more
that's
like a
a-
traditional model.
Full service.
Full service, thank you. More full service model, although not nearly as full service as here. You know, I was still left alone. I did my own thing. I did all of that. They just covered all my photocopies.
Okay.
Again, I was
okay.
really kind of nickel and diming it, and I
Okay.
said, okay, what are my expenses going to be? And that's all I looked at, instead of what were my opportunities for growth. And I think when we first sat down, you showed me what my opportunities for growth were, and I thought, oh, somebody's really digging in and telling me how I can grow my business just by making these little
Slight changes.
tweaks.
Yeah.
And a light bulb went off,
Uh-huh.
and I said, okay, I can do this.
Okay,
It may not
good.
happen tomorrow, it may not happen
Right. It's a process.
2 months, it's a process, and
Sure.
I'm going to have to make these little changes. And so my first year, talking about little changes, I did exactly the same number of transactions the year before,
Mhm.
but I made $100,000 more net. to me.
First year with masters.
First year of me, masters.
got
And
it.
logically, if
Yeah.
you would have told me that, I would have believed
Would-
you.
right.
Because I said,
How is
I
that
would have said,
possible?
how is that possible?
Right.
Did the same number of transactions at where I'm paying more commission to you,
Right.
but I still netted more money in my pocket. So that was a huge eye-opener for me. And then the next year, I did a few more transactions, and then the next year, a few more transactions, and then this last year, I made a huge jump.
Yeah, well, you went from in 17, you earned in excess of $500,000 gross commission income.
Right.
Okay, which is a great year by almost everyone's standards, to just short of $1 million
Right.
in 2018.
And that was a huge jump.
Yeah, it's a huge jump. That's
Yeah.
30%, 40%.
Much better.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And kept most of it, right?
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
okay, good.
Yeah, I don't do any I don't do any of the advertising, stuff like that. My time is spent prospecting, on the phones or going on appointments.
Got it. Good. So you must have a big team,
No.
no? Tell me about your team.
I have an assistant who, this year's the first year she worked full-time.
Okay.
So I actually think that was part of the shift for me this year, because it allowed me to delegate more to her. But she's been part-time for the last 4 years. So, so she's full-time now, 40 hours a week. And then I have a buyer's agent who works with me as well.
Okay, so agents think to make $1 million a year, you need this large team of people, but we actually did the calculations, played all the games, did all the things. Now, you're being dual coached. You're being coached by the Mike Ferry organization, and you're being coached by me on a regular basis. And we're looking at your numbers, and we're slicing and dicing, and we're looking at all the different options that you have all
Right.
the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it works for you to have 3 people on your team, and then the Century 21 Masters covers all the other things, the broker, the issues that come up, et cetera.
Right.
So you don't have to deal with that kind of stuff.
That's been one of the greatest things too, is if I have a problem, Cindy, our broker, she's an attorney, and I just say, Cindy, here's my problem, take care of it.
Right,
And
and
she
she's
takes
pretty
care
good
of
about it?
Yeah, absolutely.
good.
It's great. I call her probably once a week. Hey, it's me again.
Nah.
Maybe not that much, but
No.
but yeah, no, it's great to have that resource, and I don't have to stress about it, because I'm 99% sure I'm confident I'm doing the right things, but sometimes people come back with wacky things.
Right.
And when that happens, I can just pass it off to her and let her deal with it.
Okay.
I don't have to worry about it.
Excellent. So let's switch gears slightly. So money obviously is important, and you're hitting your numbers. But there were some other things that we talked about 3-4 years ago when we first got together that were important to you, and I think you're hitting most of those goals in your life right now. And those are, and it's all part of, so it's not just money. It's life goals, it's personal goals, it's personal and physical goals,
Right.
all those kinds of things. And are you having to work 60-hour, 70-hour weeks? I mean,
Not
tell
at
me,
all.
tell us about that.
No, I went to a party a couple years ago, and we did a Come As You Will Be in 5 years from now.
Okay,
And it's from Jack Canfield's Success Principles, and he talks about having a party where you show up and you talk about all the things you accomplished in the last 5 years,
okay,
as if it already happened. And one of my friends sent me the picture of all the things that I had written down that I was going to accomplish, and more than 50% of those things have already
wow,
happened.
that's great.
So that's been really exciting. Last year was huge for a lot of stuff that I accomplished, but yes, and I mean, right now I pretty much go home at 5 o'clock unless I have an appointment at
Right.
5:30, which
Okay.
most of the time I have my appointment slots at 4:30. So 90% of the time, if I suggest 4:30,
Okay.
they say sure.
Good.
And then I do work on some Saturdays, but it's a half day.
Okay,
So I'll do some prospecting or I'll go on appointments.
good appointments. Yeah.
But I don't put in a full day, and
Okay.
frequently I'm off doing other things.
Cool.
And I'm off on Sundays.
Cool, very cool. So most of the business you do now, let's say in 2018 and now 19, comes from what source of business? I mean, for you, is it, first of all, what percentage of your business is buyers and sellers in terms of your overall business last year?
Last year, it was more of 60% listings and 40% buyers.
Okay,
And last year, about halfway through the year, I made a commitment to completely not show buyers at all. So now it's completely up to my buyer's agent. I was having a little hard time letting go of that. So I made a commitment to do that. You know, I
Okay.
was still showing some of my friends, or some of the higher end stuff.
I
and-
have to show them, they can't be. Yeah, I
Right,
got
yeah,
it,
I mean,
yeah.
it was, so I've been letting go of that and passing that on, and delegation, so that I can be focused more on finding more listing business.
Right, and because the listing business generates some leads, which gives business to your buyer's agent and gives you an opportunity to get another
Right.
listing.
And
Okay.
the best buyer for her to work with is a seller who's already in escrow, needs to find the next property.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're motivated.
Exactly.
And they move quickly.
Exactly. So the best source of that business for you comes from?
Right now,
where?
it's past client center of influence.
Really?
Mhm.
Okay,
Mhm.
good. So you're working the system?
Right.
And that's where most of your business comes from?
Yeah, I mean, it's been 16 years in the making, so, all of those people that I've worked with in the last 16 years are giving me referrals and passing my information on, or people that I've met over that time. Like I said, there was a time when I didn't work them at all, and I
Right.
lost a lot of people from that database.
Right.
And now, about 3 years ago when I came here, 3, 4, something like that, I made a commitment to really follow the system with them, and that has really grown my business.
Great.
I look at something like expireds, and I look for them each day, and I say, which ones of these do I want to cherry pick?
Okay.
Because in this kind of market, even though it's slowed right now, homes are still selling.
Mhm.
There's not that much inventory that we're flooding the market, that generally there's a reason that it's expired.
Okay.
They're not realistic, they're not that motivated, things like that. Now, there's always going to be the exception to that, but I really only cherry pick the best ones that I want to go after. I don't go after the super low end.
Okay.
I don't go after tenant occupied, things like
Sure,
that.
sure.
It's not worth it because it's so much more energy and effort. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, so your past client sphere that you take care of, touching, emailing, texting, calling, all those kinds of things that you've done over time really becomes part of your relationship side of your business.
Right.
Okay, and the expireds, so I would suspect on the relationship side, those are a little easier to deal with.
Sure.
They probably price their properties at a little better
They trust me.
pricing. They trust you.
Mhm.
Commission, what they'll pay you in commission isn't quite as big a fight usually
Almost
as it
never.
might be with an expired.
Right.
Interesting. Okay. So the relationships that you've built over time, these people are constantly working with you. So let me ask you this question. How do you've built this over time, expireds, for sale by owners, just listed, just sold, okay, and now you have this database, but obviously you want to continue growing your business, you want to get to 100, 150 transactions a year.
Right.
And doing that through your past client sphere. How will you build that database now? How are you going to grow that? What's that look like for you?
Right now, I'm focusing on getting back to doing some just listed, just sold calls,
Okay.
going back to the basics, because again, like an expired is getting 50 calls from agents.
Sure.
So they're tougher to get into.
Okay.
But it just listed, just sold, I can call them, I'm probably the only one calling them. And if I happen to catch them at the right moment, they're ready to go.
Okay.
And they're usually similar, it may not be as quick of a process, but it's somebody who is gonna move quicker.
So let me ask you this. I mean, who do you decide to put into your nurturing of your database? Could you just pour 500 people in from the community?
No.
I mean, that doesn't work,
No,
right?
that doesn't work.
Okay.
It
So
has
how
to
do
be
we add
somebody who
that?
knows me.
Okay.
And the system that I came up for that was basically, let's say I'm doing a just sold call.
Mhm.
And in fact, there's a gal who I've listed right now who this happened with. And I've actually been talking to her for almost 10 years now. This particular person was actually an old expired, but similar kind of process. So I talked to her, we had a great conversation, circumstances
This
have
goes back
changed.
10 years.
10 years.
I got it.
So this
Okay.
particular gal, I talked to her 10 years ago. Her circumstances changed, was no longer going to sell. But this person, we had a great conversation, and I said, hey, I know that your stuff has changed right now, but would you mind if I stay in touch? She said, no problem.
Okay.
So I sent her a little card, said, hey, it was great talking to you, just so that she remembered who I was.
Sure.
Sent her a card the next day, then I called her a couple weeks later and just said, hey, it was great talking to you, just want to make sure you got my cards, you have my information. If you have any questions, let me know.
Right.
And then I called her quarterly.
Okay.
And then I also send out bi-weekly videos,
Okay.
and I send out our weekly office email as well.
Got it. Got it.
So they're getting touches from all of those, and then plus I send out a postcard 4 times a year.
Okay.
Now, in her particular case, part of what attracted me is that she had 4 or 5 properties that over time she was going to sell. They were all rentals. She'd moved out to the desert, so managing property from over time, I figured, you know what, this is probably going to be a good one because she's got all these properties, which eventually she's going to get sick of managing long
Sure.
distance.
Sure.
So
That made sense to put into your
Yeah,
database and follow up.
now, if I got
Okay.
somebody on the phone who said, I don't know anybody, I'm not,
Right,
I'm not
you're
ever
gruff.
moving, they're gonna carry me out in a
Yeah.
bright box, I'm probably not gonna add that person to my database.
Okay.
But, the person who says, oh yeah, I know 4 or 5 other people in the neighborhood, that they seem to be open and friendly, I'm probably gonna add that person.
Got it. Got it.
Yeah.
Great. So, are there ever days where you know what you're supposed to do, but you don't feel like doing it?
Of course.
What do you do on those days?
Well, I just know I have to come in and do my job.
Well, but
I
you
bought a
make
new
money.
house last year.
Okay. Okay.
So that was a huge game changer for me. I think I called you and said, am I doing the right thing? Because I basically doubled my mortgage payment.
Right.
If not closer to triple it.
Okay.
So I put a huge financial commitment into that, plus all of the upgrades that go with buying a new house
Sure.
too.
Sure.
So for me, I don't really have a choice. I have to come to work every day, or they're going to be calling me and saying, where's your mortgage payment?
But Melinda, yes, I hear that, and I
Mhm.
hear you have this situation, but don't a lot of agents around you or that you've met over years have a similar have to, but don't seem to get in the office?
True.
I mean, what's the
Sometimes I don't
what's the
understand
difference?
how people can live on what they make, but.
Okay, that's a good question. But what makes you tick in that way where you say, okay, I don't have a choice, I don't have an option? Well, the way we look at it, we don't think the others have an option, and
Right.
yet
They do.
they seem to.
Right.
So what makes you different? What makes you tick? You ever thought about this? You ever look at it?
I guess probably some of that has been just a work ethic and a discipline that has been instilled in me since I was little.
Okay.
I'm the oldest of 6 kids. I always had a lot of responsibility.
Okay.
I liked working.
Okay.
I mean, I started babysitting when I was really young, and I enjoyed that,
Okay.
and I used to sell Girl Scout cookies door to door, and I like to be the best.
Yeah,
You know?
you probably sold the most, huh?
I did. It was a very aggressive competition. And being the oldest of 6 kids, in our family, it was always kind of the joke.
Sure.
Everything's a competition.
Right.
So, I feel like I'm not doing myself or anyone else's service by doing anything half-assed, so
Okay.
to speak.
Okay.
So I always want to do the best job that I possibly can be. And sure, there's days where I really would rather go out and enjoy the weather or
Okay.
do something else. But I know I made a commitment to be here for my clients, for the people who are expecting me to sell their house, and to my family and to friends that
Sure.
I have these financial commitments for. And just that sense of responsibility to me.
Okay.
I've been doing martial arts for 25 years, so
Okay. Well, that's part of the discipline,
there's also
right?
discipline
Yeah,
in that, and
yeah.
you have to practice your kicks every day and move forward, or you don't grow.
Sure.
And even if you've done that kick 1,000 times, you gotta still practice it some more.
Great. So Melinda, let me ask you this question. If you had to, for whatever reason, start over, you could take you with you, you could take your personality with you, you could take, your basic how to put together a deal transaction with you, but you needed to start over. Now, whether it was in the area you were, or you had to move to another community, but you didn't really have your database, okay? You didn't have all your past client and sphere, okay? What's the 1, 2, 3, 4 things that you might have to do to make that transition to say, okay, this is what I need to do, this is what I need to focus on, and kind of get started doing it? What would that look like for you?
I think the biggest thing that I would do is, assuming that I was moving locations, I would get out and I would preview property every day.
Okay.
And within that, I would also be door knocking.
Okay.
Because the face-to-face is really critical to get to know the areas and to get to know the people.
Right.
I think I would also be on the phones, of course, as well, because it's efficient.
Sure.
But I would just start getting to know what my bases were. I'd also probably spend a lot of time out doing networking events, getting to know people in the community and growing that. Because again, it's about finding out who's out there, who the connections are, what you're hearing from the community.
Okay.
I think you can be a little isolated if you stay in the office all the time.
So what I think I'm hearing is that you could almost go anywhere as long as you had an opportunity to preview the property, 18, 20, 30 homes,
Right.
to kind of get a feel for what's going on in the neighborhood.
Right.
And then, as long as you knew what to say and how to say it, and had those, that either learn those skills or take those with you,
Right.
that you would then start networking and start building the circle concentrically.
Yes. Exactly.
And back and forth. Okay.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think even there was a point a year or two ago when I kind of realized I was just stuck in a little bit of a rut, and I said, I need to get out and start meeting people again.
Sure.
So I started going to more networking things and doing a little bit of door knocking and just getting out and being out in the community.
You're meeting the people.
Rather than staying in the office and then going home.
Yeah.
Gotta get out and meet people.
I say this all the time. We are in the meet the people business.
Right.
And when you're not meeting the people, then that
Right.
becomes an issue.
And especially if I went to a new
Good.
community and didn't know that area, just getting out and being in the community and learning as much as you can. I mean,
Okay.
even now, I still go to town hall meetings that
Right.
the city hall has. And,
Right.
and I'm trying to learn, and I heard a rumor about a park, like, a certain street that's
Sure.
being closed off in a park, so I started calling people I knew and asking them who, is this true? Is this
Yeah.
actually happening,
Uh-huh.
or what? So just, you can't work in a
In a
shell.
vacuum, yeah.
In a vacuum.
yeah.
You have to be able to get out and meet people
Okay.
and talk to them.
Great.
Yeah.
So in wrapping up here, is there something that you wanted to share, or an idea or a thought, maybe one or two points that you could give some of the people that are going to hear this within our organization that might be a benefit, might be a help, maybe a nugget that they could take away?
I would say for me, what helped me really is making bigger commitments. I think I used to play a little bit more safe, and I used to say, I want to do
Playing small.
50 transactions, and I would
Yeah.
do 50 transactions. Now, some may say that's not playing small, but
No.
I knew I could do that.
Uh-huh.
I mean, there was one year when I pretty much screwed around all year because I was going through some stuff personally, and I did 25 deals without really working at all.
Okay,
I was screwing around.
okay.
But make a commitment, decide what you want to have, and think bigger about it.
Okay.
Pushing myself this year, my goal is to do 100 transactions. And I've got a lot of stuff going on personally and everything else. But in order to do that, it means that I have to show up, and I know what I want. I know those commitments that I've made to be able to get where I want to get. And if I fall short, I'm still falling short at a pretty high
At
level.
a high level.
And I think for a long time I was playing it safe and saying, okay, I'm going to do 40 transactions, and I would hit 42.
Okay,
And it was safe, so that's why I didn't grow as much as I could have grown.
perfect, perfect.
Yeah.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I want to thank you. I appreciate your time, effort, and energy, and all the things that you do. I love working with you. You're very coachable, which is a really big thing. And there are days where you don't feel like it, and you call me up, and we work through it.
Right.
And make that happen. But it is definitely a win-win situation.
Mhm.
So I appreciate you very, very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here.